This past week, we looked at two main ideas, and so I'm going to recap them here. The first one was that Jesus noticed people. Now, in class, we looked at two examples, well, a couple more, but two main examples, and one was Zacchaeus from Luke 19. And in Zacchaeus, we've got this man who's pointed out as being small, and maybe that is the reason that he wants to see Jesus, and there is a crowd, so the reason he has to climb up into this tree so that he has a vantage point so that he can see Jesus. Now, this is noticeable, I guess, because typically men weren't climbing up into trees. But as Jesus comes by with his crowd, he looks and he sees Zacchaeus. He calls him down from the tree and he invites him over to his house that night. The rest is history. Zacchaeus repents. He's a tax collector, and Zacchaeus repents. He had been a tax collector. He had been stealing from people essentially, and gives his life to the cause, to following Jesus. And so that is a huge and big deal. But what did Jesus do? Jesus noticed him. It would have been so easy for Jesus to have been carried along by that crowd, to just been focused on the people that were right around him and not notice the person that was trying to see. The question becomes, who's the Zacchaeus in your life, right? Is there a person that's putting themselves in a different place to kind of see into what you're doing and how you're living, or is kind of asking questions that aren't explicitly about Jesus or God or your church, but maybe just feeling those things out? Do we have that awareness? Are we letting people just be annoyances to us, or how are we reacting to that? This is the example of Christ, that he noticed people. We looked at the example of when the woman who had been bleeding internally, and Jesus again is in a crowd and going on, and she reaches out and she has faith that even if she just touches the hem of his garment, she'll be healed. And she is in fact healed, and Jesus feels power go out from him, and he turns around and he says, "Who touched me?" And the text says, knowing that she could not go unnoticed, the woman says, "It was me." So she knew that she couldn't go unnoticed, that Jesus was going to notice her. And how did that start? By her reaching out to touch him, but also him feeling power go out from him. Again, we can make numerous analogies in our own life of what that might be. But a third place that we see Jesus notice people is in John chapter 4, the woman at the well. So we are always bringing attention to the fact that this woman was a Samaritan, and she was a woman, and these were all kind of cultural taboos. Jesus would not have been talking to her. It would have been so easy for Jesus to have just sat near that well and not said a thing, for her just to go along and do her everyday work. And Jesus could have just taken out his cell phone and sat and waited for his disciples to get back. Right? But instead, he sees her go about her normal, mundane task, and he engages with her. He notices her, and he says, "Hey, can you get me a drink?" So those are great examples of Jesus noticing people. And really, we could go through and through and see so many different examples of Jesus noticing people. The second thing, which can kind of coincide with the first thing, is this idea that Jesus had a target audience. So there's a couple of places in the Gospel of Matthew where we see this come to light. One of the texts is Matthew chapter 15, verses 21 through 28, where a woman comes to Jesus for healing, but she is a Canaanite woman, i.e., she is not an Israelite. And Jesus denies her. She wants for Jesus to heal her daughter. He says that that's not his mission. That's not who he's come to, that he has come to the lost sheep of Israel. The woman shows a great display of faith, and because of that, Jesus does heal her daughter, so she's not denied. But Jesus makes a clear statement. This is who my target is. These are the people that I've been sent to. Now that can seem unfair in a way, but we have the benefit of hindsight, right? That we know that Jesus died for everyone, and that sometimes the best way to reach everyone is by just reaching a few. Even back in Genesis, we see that God called one man, Abraham, and said, "I'm going to bless the whole world through you." There's nothing wrong with having a target. God has designed us each especially. He's given us spiritual gifts. He's given us a special heart that yearns for things and hurts for things. He's given us abilities. He's given us unique personalities. And he's given us all experiences in our past that are going to tailor make us to help us to be better suited to reach out to certain people or certain people groups. And that's okay. We can embrace that. We can have a target audience, and that is okay. And you know what? When we have a target audience, we're probably going to be a lot better at noticing people that fit within that audience. So if I say, I feel like God has called me only to preach the message of reconciliation to people who are over 6'5", I am going to start noticing very tall people a lot more, or whatever the distinction you might be. And that was just arbitrary to make the point that these things, what might seem at times restrictive, can actually be very beneficial in helping us along and fulfilling the mission of God.